Welcome to our full review of the Mercedes EQC. This all-electric crossover or SUV, what is it? By Mercedes, we will find out with you together. Exterior, interior and today the driving experience. I can tell you, there's a lot to tell you about this vehicle. Join us now in Full HD, full screen and full length. Let's go. In the front you can see there is this black panel design, so it does somewhat look different, looks somewhat electric, especially if you pick this base electric trim, so to say, and they use those blue contrast for their electric EQ brand. I will soon also show you an AMG line. That then looks a little bit more normal, like for example a GLC would look alike. And indeed, the GLC and this one here, the EQC, they're both built in Germany, in Bremen, and they share thus the same platform. So you could say it's somewhat an electrified GLC, but of course they did a lot of changes, also put the batteries in a lower ground. We'll of course tell you more about that during this review. First of all, how do you like this front appearance? And the headlamps, they start directly with the LED high beam light, a special one, the multi-beam, how Mercedes calls it. So there's a lot of standard equipment already with this car. And the pricing is also very interesting. Also tell you more about that later. The length is at 4.76 meters, 15'6" or 187 inches. And that's a little bit longer than the Mercedes GLC, the combustion engine brother. And also, if you think about the electric competitors, a little bit longer than the Jaguar I-Pace, but a little bit shorter than the Audi e-tron and also a little bit shorter than the Tesla Model X. Those would be the electric competitors. Wheels start from 19 and up to 21 inch. Those ones are the mid-size, the 20 inch, and look quite interesting. There are different stylings available. There's also this very special electric styling available you will soon see with the silver car, and that is to me a little bit more too much electric look. I think to me, it looks cool when it's, has some special accentuations, but then also looks a little bit more normal-ish. The EQC logo is right there, also in this signature blue color. Then here we have those chrome-style frames around the windows, and indeed, you see it's not very high. It doesn't have major ground clearance. It sits a little bit lower than the GLC. And they also use the space in the lower ground to put the batteries right there. 650 kilograms is the weight just of the battery, to a total weight of 2.4 tons, so it's a very heavy car. But again, with electric vehicles, it's not so bad because you can recuperate, you can gain back the energy when rolling. So we'll see out how that one plays out later. As for the drivetrain, there's an electric motor in the front and in the rear, so on both axles. And interesting that the front is doing the major work and the rear is mainly accessed when you really hammer the throttle. With the Audi e-tron, by the way, it's exactly the other way around. Interesting. Also tell you more about that in the driving part. First of all, well, it is somewhat GLC-ish from the side profile, but again, a little bit lower, somewhat between crossover and SUV. And I'm really eager to find out how that one plays out when driving the vehicle. Here in the rear, it's all defined by this light strip that goes all around right there. I think it's a beautiful LED signature. The battery here is 80 kilowatt hours. I'll tell you already right now. Some of the figures I'll also repeat throughout the review because there are a lot of figures to tell you, of course. And in the lower part, there are, some bright contrast right there. But overall, a very clean and sleek design. And by the way, the trunk we open by flipping this Mercedes logo here. That's very interesting. And in the interior part, we'll also see how much space there is actually left. So what about towing? You can see here, this is an electric equipment, so to say. Comes out right there, and it's 1.8 tons is allowed. That's almost 4,000 pounds, and the Tesla can tow a little bit more. But here you also have the possibilities. So the list of electric vehicles that can tow things are actually limited. The e-tron can also do it. Here now the I want to say GLC electric. The EQC. And of course also the Teslas. And again, with this function, it's also a pretty clean one. And now we fled inside to get some cover from the rain outside. And here we can present you even more colors. That's very interesting. And here in silver, this is so to say the official launch color. This one also the special edition 1886, the first patent by Mercedes or by Daimler. And the blue contrast is, very well done in this case then here. That's also why they use this color here as the primary communication color. But clearly, this car that stands here right now has more the official electric look. It will be different with the AMG line I will soon present to you. And I want to hear your comments. Would you rather like the car to be electric from the design, or do you rather want it normal, like a sporty AMG style? Which one would you prefer? And one more look from the rear side perspective here for the silver car, where this light strip right there has also a more contrasting look. I think very impressive. However, I also would like to see a Thomas Blue on this car. Wouldn't you as well? Well, and a lot of variation in the weather also means a lot of picture variety for you. Now again, in a little bit better weather, again the AMG line with the white car with those 21-inch wheels, pretty amazing. But again, for comfort reasons, I would rather than go for 19 or 20-inch wheels. Here you can see in the AMG line you have those two horizontal fins, and that makes the look more normal car-ish alike. The same also accounts here for this grey Magno car, again also AMG line, and then you can see it also the same styling elements like the side steps at the side. And again in the close-up comparison here with those multiple horizontal for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can count very well, can't I? So 7 horizontal fins right there in this normal electric look. So which one do you prefer? And meanwhile, I also found out what they really thought about when naming it 400. Here again in the rear perspective, a daylight with this white car. Very interesting. And by the way, let me show you when I open the car and close the car, turning indicators right there. You can also see them. Well, EQC 400, why 400? Well, 408 horsepower, you might think, oh, is it the horsepower figure? But that's actually not the case. And then you think about, the acceleration figure is close to a GLC 43. But then again, if you think, for example, for acceleration, not from 0 to 100, but from 100 to 200 now theoretically, like the higher acceleration figures, then they said this one here, power-wise, rather comes close to what would be like a C400 or a E400. So they searched for a combination of figures where you can somehow relate to how strong is a diesel or petrol engine with a certain naming, like an E-Class 400 or a C-Class 400. And then how can that relate to an electric vehicle? And that's how they then came up with the 400. And that might then speak again for later models that they are also named, in an according way, maybe like a performance electric vehicle, which is then called 500. Or will they also call it 63 or 43? We'll see about that. This is the car key, it's slim and light. We also know it from an E-Class or, for example, it's pretty good. You can also use your smartphone with NFC to open and close the car. That would also be an option. Other than that, door closing sound. pretty solid. And then inside of the doors with a nice leatherette cover. This is available in different colors, by the way. Also the inserts here, you get a dark open cell matte wood that feels very good, natural, and as there's also a bright version I would recommend. There's also carbon fiber look available and aluminum, and also a so-called matrix style, like with the dot structure. So those are all the ones that are available. Leatherette cover here, also very soft for the armrest. Good build quality for the window levers. And this is a very new design element exclusive to the EQC. It's a three-dimensional one. You can really touch it also. And this, yeah, like an aluminum mesh or something, really looks very interesting. And then this interior, of course, you see somewhat GLC facelift too, but then again, it has special elements unique here. For example, those rose gold elements. Pretty trendy, for example, and also different colors for the dashboard here available. This is all soft touch. The steering wheel, we know that one here with the Distronic control on the left side. I'll soon tell you more about that. And then those seats. There are a lot of different seats available. Those ones here are called Sunnyvale, and then you get either a beige, this bright fabric on the inside, or a blue one, and on the outside you have some Artico leatherette. And well, Mercedes really spent a lot of time and effort in offering a lot of different seating choices. Therefore, I'll take a seat right here, because now I'll just tell you all about it. It might depend from market to market, but let me tell you what is all available from the works. It starts with a base seat that looks a little bit less sporty than this one. It's a little bit more open. And the base seat is either available with black fabric or with full Artico. So this material here, the very high grade leatherette, a full Artico seat in black or beige. That would be for the base seat. Then this one here is the sport seat. And this one and I are available like this here with the Sunnyvale fabric. This is a very soft fabric. This top part can be drawn, low part can be drawn back here, by the way. So it really feels very interesting. It's soft and high class, and then also available in blue. Or this sport seat in the AMG line, also then available with microfiber. I will soon show you that. Microfiber inside, leatherette outside. So Mercedes really offers a lot of different non-animal based choices. And with that offering, they are actually the number 2 just behind Tesla. Well, I mean, Tesla leads it in a way that they do not use animal source on the seats overall anymore, but Mercedes offers a little bit more variation. So that's very interesting. Of course, there are still some animal parts here. You can also optionally get animal skin leather seats, full cover, and also the steering wheel comes from works with it. But at Mercedes dealers, you can also ask for the MBUX. Cancel. We'll soon talk to you later. You can also get a leatherette replacement when you ask it at the Mercedes dealer. No, I'm a little bit confused by the system. That's always when you talk about this certain brand here, then the infotainment system gets active. We'll soon test the voice activation for you. And this is this so-called 1886 special edition for you from the interior here with a dark blue or navy tone leatherette at the inside of the doors. Also very beautifully done. And those seats are also somewhat special in the color combination, because like when you would have the AMG line, you have microfiber on the inside and then a blue Artico on the outside. That's also really cool. And then also this 1886 stitching right there. That would be something for me, really, you know. Maybe not 1886, rather 1986 to my birth year. That would fit even more. And then you can see also some special colors are used on the dashboard. So overall, really a nice special edition to go for. It will not be available all the time, I guess. Now for the initial start of the vehicle, yes. But later on, as I told you earlier, you'll still have a lot of different choices. And this is the AMG line on the interior, about €1,000 extra. Soft plush materials on the top of the door, and the Artico leatherette here at the inside, also all in black. And then special with those seats, this is the standard for the AMG line, Dynamica microfiber on the inside, sporty setup, and leatherette Artico on the outside. Also a great seating choice if you want a little sportier trim. The AMG line you can see here also comes with those optional sport seats. They are then standard for this AMG line package, and Considering for an AMG line, the extra price is not as high as usual. So also here the pricing is actually quite fair, considering Mercedes prices in general. And the rest you can see rather a darker setup, but still again with those rosé gold accentuations. And that's how the rear bench looks like. The same styling as in the front. Again, a very beautiful design work and also quite practical for your everyday driving life and also for the temperature you have on the seats. And my seating position here on the driver's seat. Headroom wise, with one with 86 or 6 with 1, still some left, even though there's the panoramic roof here. It's not too high, of course, but still okay. Seat controls at the inside of the doors, as you know from Mercedes. And again, you know this lower part can be also put back in again, if you like, depending on the length of your legs. It's a comfortable seating position. I have no possibility to test the base seats here today. I can just tell you that those optional, little bit sportier seats, they're not too sporty, so they offer you decent comfort. We've also been driving a couple of hours now, and I can, just say positive things about the seats also long-term perspective. Again, also for tall person, it's quite nice, and the cockpit is not too closed around you. It's somewhat open. The middle console is not too high. So again, feeling quite comfortable here. This is the interior overview, and somewhat, of course, you resemble the Mercedes concept here from those new cars that you have those freestanding displays. This is also standard here for the EQC. That's good. No, like this is optional, and also comes directly with the MBUX, the system, which has also a new voice input. On the right thumb here, you can control the right screen, but also with touch, but also then with this lower touchpad, that's also possible for redundant controls, you can call those. On the left side here, usually you use your left thumb to control the digital instruments right there. You can also change something from the views. So, steering wheel again can be also controlled height and also in reach, like this. An interesting also styling element that those horizontal fins in a yard style go all around the vehicle in the front. And again, a very new soft touch material. It has a very interesting surface right there, and also different colors available. And they made this additional design element again with those horizontal fins. Really interesting styling, some more daring, but without going over the top. I think that's a nice solution they found right there. By the way, this setup here, 10.25 inch, 2 times left and right, just to mention the inch figure. The climate control is still separate somewhat right here. You also have the additional heating from the battery here if it really gets too cold. Preconditioning also available. In the lower part, you have USB-C charging next to inductive charging pad, adaptive cup holders, then driving mode selector. This is a button here for all the electric functions. If we go up again to the screen, you can see then when you just hit this button, you can search for the next charging stations or set different functions right there. That's also showing you when I activate the separated heating, that it will also show it's activated when the engine is running. Well, when the motors are running. So always funny to really have the right definition for that. Well, but then let me just finish the lower part here of the middle console. You also have a separate camera button. This touchpad here, you can also write something in there, but usually you will now just use the voice input for the address. And then for all your clutter, you have this middle armrest. Let me just open it once more. It's a nice soft leatherette cover. And then you have 2 more USB supplies. And more details here to the infotainment system. Here you can see the energy flow. At the moment, just the front axis driving the car, that is, will be done predominantly. And when you hit the brakes, then something is recuperated. Very interesting. Well, and then there's also a rear view camera that you have this one up close. We really saw how the logo was still flipping. And also have a very good resolution, and it also adapts here right there. And we also hear something like a reverse beeping sound from the very rear there. That's also pretty funny. Well, and then the rest of the infotainment system, what I also want to show you is the GPS, because that works very well and also is quite responsive. Connecting the smartphone will also be possible, of course. This EQ here, by the way, is like when you press the separate button on the lower middle console. Comfort, this is here, this so-called energizing comfort control, that the seats are adjusted a little bit while driving from the normal controls to create less fatigue. Then here with apps, you will be able to have the smartphone connection either with Android Auto or with Apple CarPlay with your cable. They do not offer the wireless connection yet. So I think here everything is quite easy to control. Bluetooth connection is, of course, also still available. And what about this voice control? Hey Mercedes.
How may I help you?
Find me a hotel in Oslo. So let's see.
Please select an entry.
Ah, there we have some hotels in Oslo. This is not an advertisement, by the way. I wish those hotels would pay us, but they don't. So this is one of the things. Cancel. You can always go back.
Could you repeat your input, please?
And you can also use button at the steering wheel to go for this voice command. It's always hard to explain it then, because then the system reacts to what you're saying once more. So let's just cancel it again. Cancel, cancel, cancel. And for example, you can also set the temperature with the voice control. That would be also possible. And, just ask some questions. It is one of the best systems here that is on the market, but you always need to have a good web connection. Then all the extensive features are working. Those digital instruments are very clear to read, and you also have a lot of different options. You can also put the GPS right in there if the road would be mapped at the moment. So that's possible. Or the telephone information. You can also change what you want to see on the head-up display, and also go different designs. This is a so-called progressive design, but you also go like this, classic and sport. Oh, and did you notice, in comparison to other Mercedes cars, the normal combustion engine cars, this one here is loading definitely faster than before. So probably they worked here on the loading times for the different design. Nice. As I said earlier, a lot of things in this car are actually standard equipment, or they are not that cost intensive. The head-up display is one of those options. This one indeed just optional, but it's a good option. Current speed, allowed speed, and for example also the GPS information. You just have it in line of sight. So probably this would be one I would go for next to the blind spot monitor as well too. And to the glass roof here, the shade for that is just manual, but why not? Does the job. And then you can open it also, but it's not too clever at the moment because the whole glass roof is wet. So probably would also get even wetter here on the inside here now. By the way, I'm really astonished by the whole build quality here, especially those new materials right here. And by the way, this one here, not sure if I said it at one point, this is not leatherette. This is also some kind of new fabric at the top part. The lower part then is leatherette, the top part here all the way, and this one here is some special fabric, and they really use great materials for that. The only thing I found pretty weird is this normal back mirror, and there are some frameless, nice looking back mirrors available. Meanwhile, I wonder why they just haven't put a fancy one in here. This one is, one of the cheapest pieces in this very vehicle. Most of the other parts are really very well done. And the rear compartment here now of this vehicle, the same styling. It really fits the black exterior very well when you have the beige interior right here. Again with the Burmester sound system. By the way, it's not as good with the sound here in the C models and with the E models. Have to notice that, but still a nice sound. Then also how it looks like in the rear with those Sunnyvale seats. By the way, they also consist majorly of recycled materials. Shouldn't forget to mention that. That's also a good step. And the question is, does it not only look good, but does it still offer some decent room here in the rear? I have the seat as I would be driving, and you have those gaps at the back of the seat, so it still leaves some knee room here. It's not like super ample of space, but you can easily sit here also as a tall adult. Headroom wise, that's also still okay for me. So 4 tall adults can be housed right here. If you compare to an Audi e-tron, that one is a little bit bigger car, therefore you also have a little bit more space. But they drive a little bit different also, so we'll tell you more about it when we drive the car soon. And of course, the question is always how far you want to go on the dimensions from the exterior, depending on the country you live in. But overall, it's also a quite comfortable feeling here in the rear. Again, there are surely cars with a little bit more legroom. Mercedes, in all of their mid-size cars, and also the upper mid-size vehicles, you know, they don't offer the very best package, but still has a very comfortable seating area overall. With those seats here in general, there are no other adjustments. Isofix at the outside part. Then we have middle armrest, some space, and also some cup holders right there. And well, then there comes the disadvantage that they don't have an own platform, but still use the GLC platform. This is good for cost saving and, you know, also speaks for that they can really produce this car also at a somewhat comparable price. But then you still have this middle tunnel right there. They put also some parts underneath it to use the space. But then again, for an all-electric vehicle on an own platform, this wouldn't be necessary. 2 more USB-C supply here in the rear, next to another 12-volt power supply. You also have a separate heating control right there for the rear seats. Overall, I think the seating comfort is really good, quite cozy. I think in the Audi e-tron you have a little bit more room. It's also a bigger car, but then again you can, you know, very well live with here also for longer journeys. Now what about the trunk? Again, we flip the Mercedes logo right there. And here we go. Of course, you lose a little bit in height. It's 500 liters here. This is a little bit wobbly. There's no rail at the side. 550 liters it would be for the GLC, by the way. So, yeah, a little bit less, but still somewhat okay. Some more space below here. Well, and then, what about the measurements? In length, it's about 1 meter in length. That's totally fine. And even more than 1 meter in width. That's actually pretty good. And then we can flip the seats right there. That also works very well. So overall, very well usable trunk and easy to access. And here, let me just flip it out. That's a little bit more than 1 meter 80. So, and if you want to know the height right there, so just here, lowest point is about 35 centimeters and the highest point right here is about, yeah, it's more than 60 centimeters. And right there is 40 centimeters. And, you know, when you put a backpack upright in here, it comes somewhat close. What about a cabin trolley? Let's see it right here. So that still works. And that's, of course, good that this still works height-wise. And if we put it normally down like this, then you can also get another impression of how that really plays out. Overall, I think we can live with that. Don't you? Well, since we're used to talk about engines when we open the front hood, we also do it here, even though it, you know, for an electric vehicle, it doesn't really matter. But they have some of the design here and they put a lot of components down there, but you cannot open this one here, so it is not a frunk. That's a big difference to other cars, so you cannot use this front compartment. That's too bad. But there's a nice storage for the cable in the rear. I'll show you that later. The horsepower figure is, by the way, 408, so 408 horsepower, and acceleration figure to 100 kilometers or 62 miles now is 5.1 seconds. Wait a minute, a GLC 43 is 4.9 seconds, so it really comes close to it, and the pricing is very interesting. In Germany, the price is at 70,000 euros or 71,000 euros, and if you then deduct the governmental benefits and so on, you would almost get the price of a GLC 43. But the thing is that this one here comes with a lot of standard equipment. So usually with Mercedes, you hardly get anything, and then you have extra price, extra price, extra price, extra price. And this car here already comes with a really, you will soon see it on the interior, with a lot of equipment, which is standard equipment then. And I think, you know, it's still a very expensive vehicle. But considering other Mercedes for, you know, in this region, this one then is, at Mercedes, a quite good deal price-wise. Well, and what about charging this 80 kilowatt hour battery pack? Well, here in Norway, where we're filming here today, It's pretty easy because, for example, even just here, you know, in those public garages here at the airport, there are so many charging stations. It's really incredible if you compare it to somewhere else. And here at the moment we have the AC charger. So, of course, you can also just use a normal household plug. But if you use a wall box or something, at the moment 7.4 kilowatt is the maximum AC charge. I just hope, and I think we can somewhat expect that they will at some point also introduce a little stronger AC charger, because 7.4 kilowatt is really not that strong. The competitors offer us a little bit stronger figures right there. But I think, you know, they have to do it a little bit better as for this respect. DC charging, AC/DC, yo. So DC charging will be faster than, of course, 110 kilowatt is the maximum right there, and either with CCS or CHAdeMO, depending on where or on which market you are buying the vehicle. And here in the display you can also see the charging state at the moment at 87%, and in the lower left corner then also the current speed. Charging has stopped at the moment, so we're just about to take off here right again, therefore it says 0.0 kilowatt. Well, and what about this cable? This one is an original parts cable, so to say. Of course not produced by Mercedes themselves, but by Mennekes right there, that's the company. And this one is a clever idea because it is somewhat compact. You don't have such a long cable, you know, it just like retracts itself a little bit, but it's still somewhat flexible. So that's a cool idea. And then you can put it in this bag here, and this bag exactly fits right here. It is a little bit of a, you know, Tetris game then, but when it's stored, then it's relatively clean, especially since this car does not have a frunk, no front trunk. People say electric vehicles have a lot of power. Is that true? Let's go. Plop, and that's already 100 kilometers an hour or 62 miles. And probably heard also some bottles at the inside of the doors were flying all over the place. Wow. That was really powerful, and indeed it comes to my theory that this one here can also be somewhat a replacement for a GLC 43 AMG, because, you know, just about, we have to check the time code here in the video, but the official one is like 5.1 seconds to 100 kilometers or 62 miles an hour, and I think we could easily reach that. Very impressive. Also very interesting how they do that with the distribution between the axles, because usually Mercedes have, with their compact vehicles, the front-wheel drive platform, and then all-wheel drive, front plus rear. But the bigger ones usually have rear-wheel drive and then rear plus front on demand. That would be this size here. But for the electric vehicle, the front motor does, like, let's say, most of the time, all the power work, and then the rear motor right there, that one is only accessed when you really, punch it like we just did it right there. So this one has a little bit more front wheel bias because they say it's more efficient than the whole operating system. There's no mechanical link between those two motors. It's very interesting. The optional augmented reality function will also kick in. You can see it here in the GPS screen. Very interesting. There's the camera view, and then we can see, for example, what the name of the streets and so on. And when I'm now coming to the end of this roundabout, usually there should also have been like a sign of where I should be going, but it wasn't in this case. It's maybe not available for all roads and so on. This is also the reason why I went the wrong way now. But that's always a good experience. Can now put in the reverse gear. A very good resolution here also from the rear camera, top drone view from above. And this is so cool when you're just turning with this vehicle, it's all silent. That's what I love with electric vehicles, especially in these low speed regions. It's all good. By the way, up to a speed of 30 kilometers an hour, this car here actually gives you some beeping sound, or actually like a spaceship sound from the exterior, because that was actually demanded for safety. It's also just a regulation. And above 30 kilometers an hour, an electric vehicle is as loud as a normal petrol car anyway, because then the tire noise is more significant than the noise from the engine. That counts from everything on the exterior. Interior-wise, however, we have the experience that an electric vehicle is even more silent, also at mid-speed regions if you compare it. Like now, we're driving 60 kilometers an hour. Then to me, the electric vehicles are still more silent. And then if you drive even faster, then the wind noises are the crucial ones that you hear or don't hear. Very interesting. The question is, if it doesn't have a real bias, does it still feel Mercedes-alike, also from the all-wheel drive? Well, first of all, it is a very performant car, so you always have a very good acceleration, and it's also, well, it's not nice for us to film, but it's really cool to test this car also here in the rain, because that also gives us some perspective on the grip we have. And as we didn't need a launch control for this car here. You've seen I really hammered the throttle all the way in sports mode, and there was no loss of grip whatsoever, and such a strong acceleration, although the road was wet. That really speaks for this all-wheel drive. We had the same experience with the Audi e-tron, where we could test it in this Namibian desert, that those electric all-wheel drive systems are actually in a way better than the classic all-wheel drive, because you can so fine-tune of where the torque is going to, and that guarantees an optimum traction. That's really interesting. And I have to say, this car really drives awesome. I like driving the GLC, yes, already. This one here is way heavier than the GLC, but the funny thing is that it feels more agile. The center of gravity is lower because the heavy battery pack, 650 kilograms, is really, put in the bottom of the vehicle. That makes it sports car-like from the driving feeling. So although it's really heavy, it drives sportier than it should be from the figures. That's really interesting, and it's a lot of fun here in the corners. When you accelerate out, you feel that the first car is pulling in the front a little bit, then the push from the rear also comes the more you hit the throttle, so that's very interesting. Driving mode here in the sport mode, by the way, it's still comfortable, and the steering is actually quite natural as for the feeling. That's cool. Driving mode here, for example, also in comfort. Then the suspension is a little bit softer, and also the throttle input is a little bit different. This one here equipped with an adaptive suspension. That's standard equipment. The air suspension is not available. I suppose that's because you don't have room for that as you would have in the normal GLC. I'll try to clear that up also for you too. But the suspension does a good job, so I'm not really missing the air suspension here. That's really cool. Not too much of a difference between the sport and the comfort mode, I have to say. This is of course counting more for those combustion engines where the shifting characteristics are changed. Then it actually plays a bigger role. Again, really cool as for the handling of the whole vehicle. I have to say, it's more fun to drive this one than the GLC, and if you really think about switching from a GLC 43, if you compare it like equipment-wise and so on and power-wise, you won't have less fun, you will have more fun. It's all about the charging infrastructure. I can just tell again, if you're not like someone who drives 40,000 kilometers a year and every day you have to drive long journeys, if you have someone like a normal driving profile or an average driving profile and you have the infrastructure, then you can easily also go for this electric version. The assistance systems work the same way, also like with the Mercedes ICEs. So at the moment, by the way, great look through this head-up display. I also can tell you about that in the interior part. We did it earlier. Also see the speed right here in the digital instruments, all standard. Blind spot monitor would be this small triangle. No one will overtake me here. And again, the ACC is working pretty well. It also has some new functions that, for example, when there's a traffic jam appearing and you're driving really fast, it ultimately reduces the speed to at least 100 kilometers. So yeah, that can happen in Germany, especially. You drive like 150 or something, and then it's reducing the speed to 100. And you also say for a traffic jam, they get the information from the GPS and so on. Very interesting as for this aspect. It's actually also quite silent as for the wind insulation. So it's somewhat windy and rainy outside, but still I don't have to raise my voice that much. Oh, the ACC, by the way, was reducing the speed automatically in front of this roundabout. That's also one of the functions where they connect it actually to the GPS. I'm also feeling quite good on those seats. You feel also somewhat a little bit sportier than in a GLC because you sit a little bit lower. The car does not have any significant ground clearance, and it's more... Is it an SUV feeling? That's a good question. So I think it's a little bit more than a crossover feeling. I would say it's between crossover and SUV from this high driving feeling. But it is somewhat a feeling that you would say it's more comfortable than you would have in a sedan or estate. Not as high as you would sit in a GLC, but still, I think overall a very good compromise. I like that. So, I mean, we had some significant acceleration in here now, and that's why consumption is at 32 kilowatt hour per 100 kilometers. That, of course, really high, but would be the same with petrol if we would have done a launch control. The real interesting thing is now, if I reset it and just put 100 kilometers or 60 miles on the ACC, what's the consumption then? It was really interesting. It runs down from 100 and now goes down. Not sure if that calculation is, not sure if you could pick it up on a small camera. That's really interesting. So we can soon give you a figure to that. Now again, by the way, not doing anything with the pedal. The ACC is reducing the speed in front of the roundabout. It does that when you have the highest spec of that. Not doing anything, just controlling the steering wheel so far. Marvelous, right? That was really, really well done. Really amazing. Pretty cool. So this again, the highest spec of the assistance system of the ACC, that's Distronic. It's definitely a cool function. So about the total range, I mean, the one way would be to drive the car all empty, and the other way is to look at the average consumption and then calculate it up. And the latter one is actually, makes more sense. You rather do that also with the normal petrol or diesel cars. And here now, finally reached a value when we just have the cruise control and about 80 or 100 kilometers set. Then you can actually reach a consumption of about, let's see, it says at the moment, we're going towards 14 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. That's of course then the ultra low figure, but the more we drive, the more average we get then. So we'll take a look at that. 20, if you have some acceleration in there, is surely a realistic figure, and if we think about 20 kilowatt hour per 100 kilometers, then it would indeed be some 400 kilometers in range, or that's about 250 miles in range as a realistic figure. And I'm pretty sure we'll also reach soon about 20 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers here. And that's somewhat okay, the question is always, you can always use more range, but more realistic is that you quite often charge the car when you have the fitting infrastructure, and then it does not play such a big role if it's like 50 kilometers more or less, if you have at least something like 400 kilometers. I think 400 kilometers, 250 miles, you need to have that. Everything below that, then you might get in a lot of situations where you have problems, even if you have a rather average driving profile. By the way, also this styling somehow works while driving, the special styling here at the inside of the doors. You have the feeling that you're driving something different, something special. That works here with the Mercedes EQC. And it is somehow, it brings a little bit more joy, It's unique in the styling. It's an electric vehicle, an electric Mercedes. It has this really, really powerful acceleration, a great handling too. It feels smaller and more agile than it actually is, or as the weight would promise. So far, that's definitely very interesting. By the way, the ACC also got it to the speed that is allowed here at the moment. Now, there's the blind spot monitor, got this red triangle right there. So it was good that someone was overtaking us actually right here. The consumption will also depend on the temperature on the outside. So at the moment, it's not such a good condition here for the battery. 8.5 degrees Celsius on the outside. And when you then mix it with some acceleration, the consumption of course goes up. But at the final conclusion, we'll keep you updated then with our final consumption for today. We drive the car even longer. Now of course going uphill, and then consumption goes up again. But again, we'll keep you up with the final average quite soon. So far, really feel safe. By the way, we drove the same way here with the Ampera E, and that was of course totally different car. But again, nice to be back around the Oslo region because the electric infrastructure here is really very cool. So, first ride with the Mercedes EQC, very promising, and yeah, just say it is a very, very cool ride. And here you can see the augmented reality function of the GPS. This is an option. Here then the camera front view is being shown and then directly where exactly you need to turn. And our experience is it worked very well in the US, for example, with different other vehicles. Here it also works very well in the city. If you are somewhere in the outskirts, depending on the map information, sometimes it cannot work. But especially in city situations, it's very reliable. And it's very important here for electric vehicles to talk about the recuperation to gain back the energy. And there's this auto mode. So the car decides itself, also according to, GPS data, for example, and what's coming ahead. It's very interesting. Usually you can leave it like this. So at the moment here, for example, we're going downhill, but the car is then something maybe not decelerating enough. And then I can set the left shifting pedal, put it to D minus minus, and you can see I now have to accelerate again to even it out. This is in the very hard recuperation. So D minus minus. So I can put the right shifting pedal to go to D minus. So right shifting pedal is less recuperation, left is more. So here D minus minus, when I lift it forward, whoa, really goes like you would, be really braking. D minus still noticeable. Then the normal D mode, this is then a little bit. You can also see those percentages of charge and power on the right side. And then D plus or D, D plus is the last one, and this one is rolling basically. And we were also, a couple of minutes ago, we were rolling down a tunnel, and that was very, very interesting because the car was rolling and rolling and rolling, even if it wasn't, such a steep descent. It was very interesting, pretty cool. So I'm just turning back here now, take the same route. So it's really interesting to play around it a little bit with the recuperation. I would probably set it to the really, really strong recuperation when you're going down for a very long time. Other than that, if you hold the left pedal, let's see if it also works with holding the right pedal again. Yeah, holding left or right pedal goes back to the auto mode again, and then the recuperation again is decided by the car itself. And what you can also do is just use normal brakes, and then first the recuperation is being used, and when you really hammer the brakes, then of course the normal brakes are also being applied. So a lot of choices you have. They don't go the way with the auto mode that they have always a harsh recuperation always on the auto mode. That's just done if you want that. So if you prefer a one pedal drive feeling, then you would go for those, left shifting pedal and put it like Tesla, for example, sets it primarily. The German manufacturers, Audi also did that. They rather want to have like a mix, and depending a little bit more on the situation. So I would not call it a one pedal drive feeling car in the auto mode. That's just when you put it to D minus minus. Other than that, it's more a feeling that can be more compared to a normal combustion engine car, and the car then decides depending on the situation. You can surely argue for both ways, but at least you have the flexibility here. And now to our conclusion for today with the Mercedes EQC. From the styling, you either have more electric styling, or especially if you go for an AMG line exterior, it looks more GLC-ish. I think overall this crossover look works for a lot of people. I also, talked about some people passing by, and they were all very interested or enthusiastic about this vehicle, so obviously it does work. On the inside, I think even better, they found an own styling there. Some elements, of course, you see that it's basically a GLC platform, and that's, I think, not a bad thing at all. The GLC is a good mid-size SUV, but I really like those unique styling elements they found there on the interior. For example, those really touchable horizontal fins there, and great seating choices they offer here. This is really high class, at the same time sustainable, and really different choices you want to have with microfiber, fabric, or all the way leatherette and so on. So really cool styling, and well, the package they offer, it could be a little bit better maybe, but still it works for 4 tall adults, and also the trunk space you have available is still somewhat okay. Maybe a little bit more height in the trunk would have been cool overall, but I think overall with the car you can very well use it as your primary vehicle too. Power performance wise, I mean here 765 Newton meters of torque. Not this one, not under the hood, but the electric motors then placed a little bit lower. So very interesting power wise. It was a great agile handling. I had so much fun driving this car, and that really speaks for it. The Audi e-tron, by the way, was also a lot of fun. I think this one maybe feels a little bit more agile even, and I think it has a little bit more class design-wise than the Jaguar I-Pace. The Tesla, they feel less agile, are also a little bit lower in the build quality, for example, are not as silent as the Audi and the Mercedes when you drive higher speeds, for example, as for noise insulation. Then again, the Teslas also have their special unique selling points with the infotainment system, with the Google integration and so on, and with a very calm design overall. The Tesla Model X, of course, very special with those captain seats where you can get in if you have the 6-seater setup. So all have their unique selling point. But I think now, after driving this one here, it comes close somewhat to Mercedes customers because it's a very comfortable ride. At the same time, they keep the Mercedes design styling elements. So I think this vehicle will work pretty well. What do you think? Well, and talking about the package again, with the trunk, we sometimes had the situation that it didn't close properly and had to push the luggage in again, because this one here rather comes close to the GLC Coupe than to a GLC SUV. But packaging reason were not the reason I found out they did not offer an air suspension. The reason for that was rather pricing, because it's, again, another coast-worthy option to get the air suspension. Plus, they did not expect that too many people would pick the air suspension in this vehicle optional. That's the reason they said they do not offer the air suspension here in the EQC. Well, I'm not exactly sure about that, because usually Mercedes offers a lot of different options, but they also try to simplify the option list here. Also, again, to be able, not that the price exceeds all limits. I think you can understand that. Well, suspension-wise, comfort-wise, you do not miss an air suspension here. So air suspension is great, well done. It's also not such big of a problem. And I want to close our conclusion here with the Oslo city view, and also our final conclusion on the consumption and the range, because as we've driven the car more and more and more, it became a more realistic average. The new WLTP figure, so the official driving cycle, is between 25 and 22 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. And those new WLTP figures are also more realistic than the old consumption figures were. And the one we could score here ourselves is an average of 23 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. That is somewhat comparable to the consumption of the competitors, yes, And as for the range, if you calculate here with the battery pack, we can say that the effective range then would be about 350 kilometers or 220 miles. So those were our impressions here of the Mercedes EQC. Different things we've been showing you today here. I think, well, we enjoyed it really, driving this car, and I hope you also enjoyed it here together with us. Please leave us your comments to the EQC and also tune into the competitor reviews, the Audi e-tron, the Jaguar I-Pace, Tesla Model X. We'll also link those in the video description. And also tell me, would you consider this here as a replacement for, a GLC 400 or a GLC 43? We're looking forward to your remarks, and please join us next time.